I hope that what I can show you tonight is a kind of fitting tribute. It's a lot of work. I hope that it shows you the intensity of the place. I also hope that it shows you a rigor. I think there's a misunderstanding in the broader educational community that somehow we just all run off in the woods and we build these things. And there's the dialogue that takes place and how hard the folks work with this carrot of building something is remarkable. And it's been an amazing ride for me to go along with that and see it, but also be the person who's kind of beating the drum and expecting to be more rigorous. You know, at the beginning of every year, we take the students around all of the projects and critically review the projects. We don't have great libraries. We don't have those sorts of resources, but we have this kind of encyclopedia of buildings that we can go to them and say, well, we screwed up here, and we did well over here, and so what do we learn from all of that? So as an architect and an educator, that's been my role and my responsibility. If anybody asks why it's changed, well, we're observing what we've done. We're also a neighbor, and we are not tourists. I mean, our students move in and out, but the studio has remained in one place for 16 years. If we screw up, I get to hear about it. The studio gets to hear about it. There's a real responsibility that we have, and it's so much about the power that I think that the studio we've engendered real trust, I think, locally, and you'll see from the projects that we've started to do that they really have engaged with us completely and said, yeah, you can do this, and we'll support you doing it. Sorry, and tonight I'm going to really, I hope, sort of show you a little bit about the process. The books and the magazines, they normally show the sort of the sexy photographs and all of that. I'll show you the sexy photographs, but hopefully, from 9 years of experience as being a kind of an insider and an outside, and I can also explode some of the myths for you a little bit. All of the work that you're going to see tonight is designed and built by kids that are between the ages of 18 and 23 years old. All of the projects that you see are funded by soft money. The universities, which is a land grant institution, helps us with our O&M, our overhead and maintenance, and it has done since Sambo died, but we're still out there shaking the tin. So if there's anybody got a few coppers in change tonight, I'm very happy to pass the tin around, because we always need your money, okay? I promise I'll stop reading off this, but I think the other thing to just say is that I'm going to take you for a little bit of a ride into Hale County to show you that the people and the place matter, because otherwise I don't think you'll understand the nature of the work that we do. So I think it's really important for me to do that and kind of luxuriate that in a little bit. But I also hope that what this does tonight is engage you all in a kind of a positive critique of the way that we educate architects. I think somehow what the Rural Studio does is folks look down their nose at it a little bit, and I don't really understand that, because I think we should all the time be asking questions of how we educate, how we procure, how we make architecture, because I think that's really important. The chosen location in Hale County is an area well documented by James Agee and Walker Emmons in the seminal Letters and Outpraise Famous Men. And that was done in the 1930s. Those guys were really shocked by the poverty that they found. And just to give you a sense, this is Greensboro, 10 miles from where the Rural Studio is. It's a beautiful photograph. I actually used to live in that building there, in that second floor apartment. I kind of had a New York loft apartment in Greensboro. It was very sexy. And this is Greensboro today, and there's essentially not an awful lot of change. It's got a new color of some blacktop on the road and a nice new yellow stripe down the center of it. So it doesn't change very much. Similarly, this is a sharecropper's home, circa 1930s. And this is Mason's Bend today. And, if Mockbee was standing here, he would kind of be beating his chest with his great southern drawl, and more than just saying y'all, which I get into the habit of doing. But Hale County is a population of 16,000. There's a remarkable 35% of the population lives below the poverty line. and something like 41% of kids live below the poverty line. So it doesn't, it doesn't take a guy with a stupid accent from England to tell you that kind of thing is just ridiculous in the modern, in the modern United States of America. And Sambo felt very strongly that we should do something about it. I don't believe he felt that the Rural Studio was put on the planet to solve all that, because I don't believe that, and I don't think we believe that. But I think that the great thing is that the Rural Studio has exposed students and clients to each other, and there's been a fantastic interaction over the last 16 years that I think has done nothing but being positive. It's a beautiful faith-based place, and religion is absolutely everywhere. There's evidence of the old great white wealth and also the great poverty. And this, again, is Mason's Bend, and, some of you guys will know this, but it's, images like this that you imagine from being from South Africa or the ghettos in Brazil or somewhere like that, but not in the United States of America, my goodness. So this is where the Rural Studio is. It's sort of slap bang in the middle of Hale County. We work in 3 or 4 counties. There's counties missing off here. We've actually worked down here in Dallas County. The interesting thing about this is that sort of the studio's projects are based on about a 25-mile radius for the pragmatics of managing the projects, but also just, gasoline. And we have really started to consolidate in this area just because it seems to be the right thing to do. The students, and we've moved from having there's three sets of students. We've moved from having second years. Suddenly we've got now we have third years. Obviously, the unique thing of the Rural Studio is that they get to design and build everything what they do. We encourage all sorts of negotiation when they talk about their project. They go through very similar things that you all do when you're designing, and there's a variety of ways to kind of set this up, whether they work individually or in teams, and when you start the negotiation as to what the hell it is that we're going to do. Make lots of models, lots of three-dimensional stuff. You're starting to talk to people who have no idea what an architect can do or does, and you have to be very much aware of that. And then, of course, they get to do it all, and we're lucky enough to be in a position to be able to allow them to do it all. They're somewhat under the radar, so there's a lot of the sort of the health and safety issues that take place in a place like New York City. There's simply not the funds to be able to kind of manage all of that. So we take that responsibility very seriously. Thesis comes out part of the 5-year program at Auburn. They come out with a sort of an expectations that they can create the project. They fundraise for the project. They dialogue with the community about the project. And work in a small team, and then run off and design and build it. So there's an amazing kind of experience for them. This is a particular project in Perry County. The probate judge came to me in 2001 and said, we've got $110,000 from ADECA. Can you help us reopen our park that was closed in the 1970s? I said, man, it's a dream project. Let us at it. And so they wanted a pavilion built. So, this is the kind of process they go through. They go a lot to the site. We really encourage them to take advantage of being the local architect. Get to the site every day. Understand the weather in all seasons. They bring it back to the studio and collect it in, bring pieces of the site back to the studio with them. They make three-dimensional drawings to communicate with each other as much as anything. I think the power of drawing is just so important relative to the verbal descriptions. Make lots of three-dimensional models, and then get, as the builder and the maker, they get the chance to really go there and mock it up and get a sense of the scale of the thing. How big is this thing before we run off and spend all of the money? Make lots of, again, there's sort of an accusation that the Rural Studio doesn't draw anything, or a kind of a myth that there's nothing drawn. Well, there's an awful lot of this goes on. There's an awful lot of mock-ups of those details, so we don't go and make 5,000 of these things and waste our money. We even do sexy, well, not quite so sexy renderings as they do at the Cooper Union, but a tree here has to kind of look more like a cartoon tree so the client knows what the hell's going on. And then, we get folks like Steve Bedaines, who's a kind of the aging rock star of design build, and he comes and critiques the project at the site. And that's very powerful as a situation. So you can really literally stand in the place you're going to do this, and people like Steve will give us great advice. And then they get to really present to the community and the client. And most of the times we'll encourage them to put a client body together. This had a self-made client. There's the probate judge, 2 county commissioners, the guy from fisheries, the mayor. I mean, an extraordinary coverage across the community here. And these guys, they get to rehearse this. So it's very important for the Rural Studio that this is all rehearsed. Because if you screw up, it doesn't matter how pretty your drawings are. If what comes out of your mouth is silly, you've lost it, and you've lost them. So strategically, we really rehearse these things, just down to how we organize the meeting spaces. And it's one of the, I think, one of the better parts of their education. And they're encouraged to be entrepreneurial. This particular group got on the front of the Marion Times. It was about them asking for some cedar to be donated. They wanted to build a building out of cedar because it was in a floodplain. They get to build the project, obviously get into the ground. They're frustrated because Andrew's making them draw again. Why are you making us draw? We want to go build. They get to play with big toys. In this case, because they took the cedar trees down and they milled the cedar themselves, they began to understand the wasted material. And they used all of the bark from the tree on the inside of the formwork, and it really makes a beautiful foundation condition as they set it on the inside of the formwork. Then they get local guys, if we're doing some heavy lifting steel-wise, we'll get the local guys to put it in, and then they stand around and drink beer and pat themselves on the back. And then they go, oh shit, this is 26 feet up in the air, what am I going to do about this? So, and of course at the Rural Studio, they're not allowed to use hard hats or safety harnesses. I mean, we have to be macho, for goodness sake. I mean, I think this one's a fantastic conversation here about this project. When you build a roof, it's much easier to always be building on top of something. And these guys came back and said, we really want to put metal on the underside of this. And I said, well, you realize to make a really hard, soft surface, you're going to have to sheathe it. And they said, well, we understand that. And I said, then, well, what about the oil canning? If you're putting big sheets on there, it's going to kind of buckle around the screws. And said, well, we like that because it'll give a kind of pillow effect. And so they kept going on, and they said, we want to do it. So they did, and they worked hard putting the plywood up above their heads, all of that stuff that's very time-consuming, that if you draw it, you don't really think about it, but it's time-consuming. They taught themselves to bend the sheet metal. The mayor showed up and had the grand opening. And they were right. The borrowed light from making that extra investment of the sheet metal on the underside. I mean, it's a beautiful space, and it would not be the same if it didn't have that metal there. So it's 2 sort of folding planes. One is cedar, one is metal. The cedar wraps up and makes benches and makes an entranceway. It's in a beautiful, and they reclaimed the old barbecue pit and seating area for the pavilion. And then this is the kissing bench. There's always a little bit of sex in the Rural Studio projects. This is the sunset bench. These 2 guys were caught kissing by Big Selma. And these guys are suggesting that the Rural Studio is the #1 architecture school in the world and not the Cooper Union. So some of you will get that joke. This kind of tragedy happened at, this was Hurricane Ivan, the one before Katrina. Came down, the hurricane took a lot of trees out, and this particular tree here, it was actually hit by a tornado that was spawned by the hurricane, and it came down and it hit that beam right slap bang in the center. So we got $10,000 from FEMA and rebuilt the thing, but you can never plan for these things, and we had to do the right thing and get involved. Kind of the sheer power of it was amazing. Most recently, we've been looking at a lamella structure, which is taking small lengths of off-the-shelf lumber and making wide-span long structures. We built it using a jig. You build the foundation wall, you put the jig on wheels, hydraulically you lift it on the platform. So you lift it up, you build a section of it, you lower it, move it along, lift it up, build another section of it. So you could kind of build this to Mississippi. And this was an animal shelter, the prettiest animal shelter on the planet, I would argue. It has underfloor heating in it for the animals, natural ventilation, natural light. And then we went up to Akron, and I said, look, we've spent all that money on a jig. You've got to use the jig again, so we're kind of further exploration of the lamella. We screwed up the first time with the Boys and Girls Club in Akron in 2000 because the guy that was giving us the piece of property that we built on couldn't ultimately give it over to the city. So there's a building sits in Akron that started to get vandalized that we can never inhabit because the Boys and Girls Club of America won't let you operate out of a privately owned piece of property. So, 2 years ago, we sat down with the mayor and said, what are we going to do about it? And we all agreed we better start afresh. And so in a month's time, this is going to open as a Boys and Girls Club. We're all very excited about it. It's right in downtown next to the car wash and gas station. There's a big space here that is for basketball. So we just tipped the lamella over to one side so it looks as if it's about to fall over, and then squeeze this other building under one side of it. And it's held so that this big gutter here is actually stopping these legs from buckling. So the whole thing's tied together by that. And then the building inside, this is the unconditioned space, which is their rec room. And then there's another space for the computer lab, and chalkboard on the walls so the kids can kind of decorate it. This was the grand opening with the mayor and everybody. Great day. So, and then most recently, I suppose, the kind of future alongside Lions Park at the Rural Studio, the $20,000 house, is an amazing project that we sort of started 5 years ago. There's been 8 iterations. A house that there's a rural development loan that the poorest of the poor can get. And what that means is it's a house that's going to be built by a contractor. There is no model at the moment. The cheapest model at the moment is $80,000. So you can get a loan, but the only approved model is for an $80,000 house. So there's a kind of bullshit federal trick going on there. And so we're calling the bluff. We're doing a $20,000 house because folks on welfare could actually be allowed to get that loan, which would be about $100 a month out of their $900 Social Security payment. What it means being built by a contractor is that the house will actually be about $12,000 in materials, $8,000 in labor and profit, and it also means you've got to build it in 3 weeks. And this is the one that we just finished. This is Dave's house. We're working with Regions Bank. It's got we really believe in the screened-in porch. Very simple interior. There's Dave. Big living space, 10-foot ceilings. The kind of design hits of this are the 10-foot ceiling, the porch space. What else? And I think it's pretty damn fabulous for $20,000 or $12,500 in materials, this one.